So you've read the Behavior Change and Habit Bible, Atomic Habits, and you did all of the things right. You used habit stacking, you set up your cue, you even reduced friction, and yet it didn't work for you. Your healthy/productive habit flopped, and you just don't get why when you try these ideas, they don't work for you the way you want them to. Welcome to Grow with Intention, the podcast for people who want to create a life that feels good. In this episode, I want to talk about how to use the marble mentality, which is an alternative to the usual, more rigid approach to creating new habits and healthy, productive behaviors in your life. It kind of opposes a lot of the advice out there, but there are some reasons why it might work better for you than a lot of the advice out there. But before I talk about the marble mentality and how to use it, you need to know something about habits that most people who talk about habits online either don't know or don't talk about, which is that there is currently debate amongst habit scientists as to whether automatic habits can even be formed for more complex behaviors, so exercise, meal prepping, versus less complex behaviors like checking your phone. So if complex behaviors can't be turned into these automatic habits that we don't even think about, we just do, does that mean that behavior change and growth isn't possible? No, because behavior change and growth doesn't always need to look like strict, rigid habits. That is just one approach. I think of this kind of like strict dieting versus intuitive eating and lifestyle changes. Rigid, strict diets work really well for some people. Intuitive, flexible approaches work better for other people, and we'll talk about that soon. But one just is not better than the other. The next thing that people on the internet often don't talk about when it comes to habits is that the people most likely to succeed with rigid, structured, these days, this time style habits are people who, firstly, have very consistent schedules. In the words of Wendy Woods, a leading habit researcher, variety weakens habit. If you are not arranging your life to reliably, unfailingly cue your habit, then that habit will never take hold. So immediately, if your life contains a lot of variety, maybe you're a parent, you're a carer, or you just have like a busy, semi-chaotic life, you are automatically going to find it harder to create rigid habits. And they've also found that there's a certain personality type that tends to succeed more with rigid habits. People who love routine. People who thrive on structure. So what do you do if you don't fit into those categories? If you don't fit into those boxes, you might be better off approaching your habits, the changes that you make in your life, using the marble mentality. This is a way of framing habits that I first heard from Laura from How to Gist. It embraces flexibility, freedom, even a bit of creativity, and it often can work better for people who have lives that are inconsistent or super full, or simply for people who really like variety and don't thrive on structure and routine. The marble mentality introduces an approach where you think of habits and productive behaviors as marbles in a jar. Some days you add big marbles, some days you add small marbles. Some marbles look different to other marbles. So for example, if you want more movement in your life, a big marble one day might look like going to an exercise class. A small marble another day might look like parking 5 minutes away from your work, so you get a little bit more of a walk in. A regular marble could be going on a walk with a friend. The idea behind the marble mentality is that you never start from scratch. Even if you miss a few days, you miss a week, because life happens. You already have a whole bunch of marbles that you've built in your jar. They never disappear. You're never going to get a big red X. And the research actually suggests that a more flexible approach to behavior change makes those behavior changes more sustainable. In a study of 2,500 Google employees, they paid what they called routine Rachels to have a rigid workout routine. So to go to the gym at certain times on certain days every single week for a month. Then they had flexible Fernandos. So flexible Fernandos, they were paid a little bit less to go to the gym, but not at specific times, to just go whenever. They checked in with these people 40 weeks later to see which had stuck better. And routine Rachels, it turned out, became much more rigid when it came to their routines, which meant that if something went awry, like something was off in their day that caused them to not be able to go to the gym at their assigned time, they simply would not go at all. They were inflexible. And that meant that if they led busier, more complex lives, they went to the gym a lot less. Flexible Fernandos were much more likely to just work around their lives with their habits. So when their original plans might fall through, they'd just figure it out. They'd sort out another way of approaching their workout habit. They learned to roll with the punches of life, unlike rigid Rachels. I also think that when you lean into the routine, rigid Rachel approach with this time, this day, this specific routine kind of energy, you can, if you're a certain type of person, create a cycle of shame. Because inevitably, you will miss a day or you will miss a week. You might get bored of your routine. You might start resisting your routine. You might need to switch things up. And when that happens, if you've got that rigid Rachel mindset, you will be like, damn, well, what's wrong with me that I couldn't make this rigid routine work? when what you really should be asking is, what is wrong with this rigid routine approach that it doesn't do it for me? So a mini move that you can take to put this idea into practice in your life is to create a blank page in a planner or to create a blank section in your notes app. And every time you practice some kind of healthy or productive behavior in a certain area of your life, add a little note to that section or that journal. I actually wouldn't even go so far as to symbolize like, well, this is a big marble, this is a small marble, because they all count. And you might find yourself feeling like, oh, I should have more big marbles. And that's just not the vibe. Now let's talk about Recs of the Week. At the end of every episode, I like to give recommendations to help you to dive deeper into the specific topic of today's episode. And today I have two. Firstly, the 15-day consistency audio course on my app Intention. Intention is on Android. It's also on Apple. I believe this course is called How to Create Consistency and Self-Discipline. It is super juicy, super actionable, and also the reason that I'm recommending it is because today's podcast episode topic is totally taken from my 15-day course. I just took it and expanded upon it for this episode. So if you liked this episode, you're gonna like the audio course. And the second recommendation is The Joy Choice by Michelle Segar. Anything habits, anything behavior change, honestly, Michelle Segar is the queen. And if you're like, I'm not really ready to buy a book, I have an interview with her. It's one of my favorite interviews that I have done. We are so on the same page when it comes to flexible, sustainable behavior change. So I'm gonna have that linked in the show notes or in the description if you're watching on YouTube as well. I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you soon.